Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, was Rob Dillingham's rookie season a disappointment? Also, will TJ Shannon crack the rotation next year? Why he just might be rotation ready? It's all upcoming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Thursday, everybody. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. A big thank you here off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, we're going to roll along today with the player review series, and I want to dive in today on the Timberwolves' two rookies. This is, I guess, the third installment in the player review series. We've done two-way players. We've done end-of-the-roster guys. We started getting into some of the more intriguing guys. On yesterday's show, we talked Josh Minott. We talked Jalen Clark. And now today, it's last year's first-round picks. Both first-round picks, TJ Shannon and Rob Dillingham. We'll start with Rob. And I want to talk about his rookie season in the context of, was it actually a disappointment? Context matters, of course. So we'll talk about all that, but also, like, what could he provide next year, and what are the pros that Rob Dillingham brings to the table, and why he could challenge for a rotation spot. And then similar conversation around TJ Shannon. We, of course, the recency bias, the taste that was left in Timberwolves fans' mouths from this season was TJ Shannon contributing in a surprising way in the playoffs, and Rob Dillingham only playing garbage time minutes in the playoffs. But what are each of their respective expected roles going into next season based on how they profiled as rookies and what they actually provided as rookies, or I should say how they profiled as draft prospects and what they've done so far in their extremely short period of time in the pros. So we'll do all that on the show here today. A big thank you off the top for making us your first listen every day. Of course, you can listen to Locked On Wolves anywhere. It's free and available everywhere you listen. You can also watch on YouTube. You can also download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV, and you can watch there as well. All right. So the player review series. This is one of the more, I said this on yesterday's show. I thought Wednesday's pairing, the conversation around Jalen Clark and Josh Minott, and today's around Rob Dillingham and TJ Shannon are some of the more intriguing player reviews that I'll do over the next couple of weeks, because these are guys who are on the cusp of, like, they weren't in the rotation by and large this year. All four of them had moments in the rotation. Minott early in the season, TJ Shannon a little bit in the middle, and then actually again in the playoffs. Jalen Clark much of the latter part of the season, and Dillingham kind of right in the middle as well. But none of them finished the season as true top 9 rotation guys, right? The Wolves had a top 8. The 9 and 10 spots kind of filtered through. Like, it started with Joe Ingles, and then it moved to Josh Minott. Like, it was just kind of all over the place. And so I think this is intriguing because these guys are really on the fence. They're all likely to be back on the team next year. As we said on yesterday's show, Josh Minott has a team option the Wolves will have to exercise by June 29th to determine whether or not he's back. Jalen Clark just signed a 2-year deal. And, of course, TJ Shannon and Rob Dillingham are both only going to be in their second year of first-round contract rookie deals. So all four of them are very likely to be back unless the Wolves were to decline the Minott option, or if any of these guys were to be traded, which I think is pretty unlikely. And they, Chris Finch said at the end of the season, we may need to look at lengthening our rotation. And that's barely a paraphrase. That's almost word for word what he said. And all of these guys had moments that were positive, that were intriguing. The Wolves have this kind of collection of like first year to fourth year youngish guys. And they can't play all of them, and they probably ultimately long-term can't keep all of them. So what gives? And if you missed yesterday's show, we did Minott and we did Jalen Clark. It was really interesting. It was a ton of fun. Today, I want to start with Rob Dillingham and then get into TJ Shannon. Of course, both were first-round picks last year. The Timberwolves traded up to get Rob Dillingham in the draft last season as what was he, the 8th pick, I think, in the draft. The 8th pick in the draft. And, of course, the Wolves did that because they didn't have a whole lot of, like, immediate draft capital. And they also didn't have, and still don't have, cap space. They're not going to sign anybody in free agency. There's few tradable assets on the roster. That's a little bit less true now, but it was true a year ago going into the draft. And so on draft night, Minnesota gave up a future first rounder, unprotected first rounder, like 2030, and then, 2031, and then a pick swap in 2030. So like 1.5 first rounders, if you will, in order to move all the way up to the 8th pick in the draft, or to acquire the 8th pick in the draft. And the reason the Wolves did it was, well, financially, what I just stated is that the only way you're going to add true top end talent is by picking the right guy in the draft and trading up in this case to do it, because you're not going to sign a free agent. You're not likely to trade for that, although the Randle Town swap happened later in the offseason. But this is a good way to do it. You're not giving up anything from the immediate roster or assets that are going to help you immediately. You're giving up far in the future assets to help you right away, or at least that was the thought. And the idea was Rob Dillingham's the Mike Conley replacement. Mike Conley's going into his age 37 season, just 2 years left on his deal as of last summer. And Dillingham could provide some of that shot creation from the backcourt, catch and shoot ability from the backcourt. Basically all the stuff that I talked about on, I can't remember if it was Friday show or Monday show, but what was missing in the postseason for Minnesota was that additional shot creation, the additional guy that can truly get into the lane and strike fear into the heart of the opponent. Yes, Nikhil can do it a little bit. Yes, Dante DiVincenzo can do it a little bit, but none of them are striking fear in the heart of an opponent for somebody that can actually generate offense. It's the whole reason why, and we'll talk about Kevin Durant at some point this offseason. It's the whole reason why the Kevin Durant thing has some legs and why there's interest in it from the Wolves side is not just the fact that he's a Hall of Famer and that him and Anthony Edwards are buddies. It's because teams will actually be afraid of Kevin Durant scoring on them. That's not true of anybody else. Like, teams dared Julius Randle to beat them, and he did in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. That ground to a halt against OKC. But again, that's not the same thing. The attack from the perimeter is Julius Randle, teams were willing to let him catch and shoot threes. Having another perimeter oriented player that will command more attention is a really important thing for Minnesota. And again, we'll talk more about Durant later, but think about Durant in the post and Ant catch and shoot off of a Durant post up, or vice versa. Anthony Edwards is creating on one side. You get a second side attack from Kevin Durant. That's different. I don't care that he's 36. Kevin Durant is still a very valuable offensive player, that to say nothing of the defense. That's a conversation for another day. But the point is, that was what Rob Dillingham, the idea was, hey, this guy can get to his spot on the floor. He's extremely efficient when he shoots the basketball. He can create for others. He can be instant offense and put pressure on a defense and bend the defense in a way that nobody else on this roster can do, including obviously Mike Conley, a dynamic that wasn't currently on the roster. And all that still remains true. The reason I wanted to lead with the question of whether or not he's a disappointment is I think unequivocally, I think that's an unfair. My own question is unfair. I don't think that's a fair thing to say about Rob Dillingham. Was he a little bit disappointed when he saw the floor, and was it disappointing he didn't see the floor much? Yes. And yes, I think that's all true. However, we're talking about a one and done guy who is the SEC 6th man of the year. He wasn't even a starter in college. They drafted him 8th overall, coming into a Western Conference Finals team. The expectation that he would, and I'm not saying the Wolves had this expectation, but if anybody had the expectation that he was going to come in and be gangbusters and be Lou Williams or Jamal Crawford immediately, that was unrealistic. The profile of Rob Dillingham is still extremely exciting, and I think could make a big difference this year. So I want to talk about, like, what kind of data do we have from Dillingham's first year, albeit limited. It is limited data, but then also his draft profile. Talk through my notes after the Wolves drafted him, and what of that have we seen versus what have we not seen at this part, very, very, very early in his career. Are there any real concerns? And, how should we, not that we have to assign blame here, but like, how should we feel about Rob Dillingham's first season in the NBA and how the Wolves handled him? We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are down to the finals, and every night is going to deliver highlight-worthy performances in the finals, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You might wonder who's going to show up big in the finals. I'm actually really intrigued by this Pacers-Thunder series. Of course, it could be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Tyrese Haliburton's going to step up. I think he's going to have a phenomenal series. You might just want to live prop bet the whole thing and just kind of see how things are playing out. Like, how are the Pacers? How are they trying to defend the Thunder? And does that mean that SJ is going to go off, or maybe it's J-Dub, maybe it's Jalen Williams that's going to go off? You could just live prop bet this thing mid-game based on how the action's unfolding. If you have a read on who's heating up, you could just back it up with the same game parlay. Why not? If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so on draft night, the Timberwolves acquire Rob Dillingham, and my notes on Rob Dillingham: 6'1" point guard, 6'3" wingspan, 164 pounds soaking wet, like small dude. I think he gained a little bit of muscle when he got into an NBA program. Creative playmaking guard. He's a shot maker, really good catch and shoot. He was 38% on off the dribble threes at Kentucky. And really, he was good off the dribble from everywhere on the floor. Mid-range, you name it, he was good off the dribble. Catch and shoot threes, 88 attempts, which is solid volume for one college season. He was 48% on catch and shoot three-pointers. Obviously, we did not see that level of success in the pros. We'll talk about that in a moment. Great with using change of pace. Really good floater. Didn't shoot a lot of floaters, but a lot to like there in terms of his touch and his knack for just simply putting the ball in the hole. And again, the change of pace thing is huge, especially when you're that size. He's athletic. But that slight of frame and that slight of build and just that size overall in the NBA, you have to be able to use change of pace. Like Anthony Edwards does a great job with it. He doesn't even need to all the time because he's so athletic and so strong, but he's really good at using it. Dillingham's great in the pick and roll as well. He shot 50% as a shooter out of the pick and roll. His team averaged 1 point per possession as a pick and roll ball handler and shot 43% on threes out of pick and roll. So again, 48% catch and shoot threes, 38% off the dribble threes, and 43% in pick and roll pulling up and shooting threes. Really strong coverage, really strong feel in the half court, good at reading pick and roll coverages and deciding, is it time to attack or pass? Again, something we didn't see necessarily this year. More on that in a second. And then I wrote in my scouting report all my concerns around defense. I thought he could actually be a pretty good point of attack defender. Not even 20 when they drafted him. I thought there was a chance I think generally people thought there was a chance he could still be growing. The on-ball technique isn't ideal, but I thought just based on watching him at Kentucky, there's a chance he could turn into a solid point of attack defender. And he actually was not terrible as a point of attack defender in the NBA. It was the off-ball stuff getting lost, and anytime he was screened, which is a problem, he struggled with screen navigation. But if he was strictly guarding somebody in isolation, I actually thought he did a pretty good job of moving his feet and mostly defending without fouling, yet still being relatively aggressive. And then back to the offensive side, his overall touch is super important. The change of pace thing plus touch, all very important for an undersized guard who's a good, not great, I would say very good, not great athlete. That's all very promising for a guy who's as undersized as he is. Now, the impressive feel in the half court that he showed at Kentucky, that was not there at the NBA level. I would say a lack of poise was the biggest issue for Rob Dillingham. And when you're talking about an undersized rookie guard, you have to have poise if you're going to have success. I thought too often he made rush decisions. It was, I'm not sure I can get to the basket. I'm going to dance a little bit. I'm just going to pull up and shoot this three-pointer because I was really good at shooting pull-up threes in college. But off the dribble in the half court against an NBA defender, that's probably not a winning proposition unless you're Anthony Edwards. I thought he should have more often gone downhill and gotten into the paint. And I don't know. It's a small enough sample, and we're talking 1 year, 19-year-old. I'm not saying he was like afraid to take contact in the lane, but that could have been part of it. It could have just been him not wanting to make a mistake and just thinking, well, if I pull up and shoot this three and make it, everything will be great. And then the threes didn't go down at a high enough clip, and it just looked, it was haphazard. There wasn't enough thought put behind like, hey, should I put my head down and just get to the basket? Should I get into the paint, touch the paint, get 2 feet in the paint and create for somebody else? Like that's where he, again, as I said earlier, can bend the defense. Can he get into the paint with 2 feet and either shoot his floater, get all the way to the rim, or kick it out for a bucket for somebody else? He's quick enough and a good enough passer and a good enough ball handler that should be a very doable thing for Rob Dillingham. He didn't do that as a rookie. The decision-making was short-circuited. Again, rushed is probably the best way to say it. What did I say earlier? I don't think I used the word frenzied, but he felt like what he was doing was kind of frenzied. Like he was frazzled would be another word. I'm searching for the exact perfect word, but I think all those describe it. It was just never comfortable looking. And that's fair for a 19, 20-year-old, barely 20-year-old NBA rookie on a really good team. The turnover rate was too high. It was almost 20%. And I mentioned the three wasn't good enough. It was about 34%. It's not horrific, but it's obviously not to where the Wolves need it to be. And as I said, I actually thought he was better defensively than I expected. So the biggest problems for me were the decision-making in offense and not understanding that he is a good enough scorer to get his head and shoulders past someone and get up a floater, get all the way to the rim or create for somebody else. It doesn't have to be a pull-up jumper. And I just think things were hurried, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. I think there's something there. Obviously there's something there, but I think there's something there sooner rather than later. It was just in summer league should help with that. He's got to understand he doesn't have to be the guy doing the scoring all the time. He can also create for others. And I think that's a real thing. Now the shooting, it was good. Like I said, good, not great, like 34% from three. I think the catch and shoot, he didn't get enough opportunities as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He was just under 31%. I'll say again, he shot 88 catch and shoot threes at Kentucky last season, and he made 48% of them. He's better than a 31% catch and shoot 3-point shooter. That alone, like if that comes up to a normal number, I mean, he's going to pull his overall 3-point percentage up above league average. I think that's going to rise anyway. So with a little bit better decision-making, we're talking about a true plus offensive player. Like we're not that far off. And the question is going to be, and we'll talk a little bit about this here in a minute, between him and TJ Shannon, like who's going to get some of these backcourt guard wing minutes with some scoring potential here, and who is the better true offensive threat? The floor for TJ Shannon is higher. I think the ceiling for Rob Dillingham is higher as an offensive player. And I guess you could even say overall as a player. I think what Rob Dillingham could become is I think he's literally got all-star caliber talent. TJ Shannon, I think, is more likely, like he already is a legit rotation player, whereas Dillingham wasn't when he saw the floor this year. TJ Shannon could be an eighth guy on a playoff team right now. His ceiling is probably as a decent starter. I don't know that he's, given his age and given some of the limitations in his scoring game. Limitations is the right word. I just don't know that he ever puts it all together to the level of being an all-star, and that's okay. I just think he's already a valuable rotation piece because of how high the floor is, but I don't know that there's room in the Wolves rotation next year for both of them. Let's actually transition to talking about TJ Shannon, and we'll put a bow on this at the end and kind of talk about a little bit more about why I'm lumping these guys together. TJ Shannon, the scouting report I had on him coming out was, and I had him a little bit lower on my list of guys I wanted the Wolves to take. And of course they ended up picking him. They ended up staying in the first round, being able to pick TJ Shannon at 27. And of course the backstory on him, he likely is a lottery pick, almost certainly a lottery pick. He was up for Naismith Player of the Year early in the season. He had the legal issues. He was ultimately, that all was resolved. I believe he was found not guilty in court. So that's all done from a legal perspective. And so the Wolves were comfortable making him a first round pick. And for all intents, for everything we've heard, he's been a consummate pro with Minnesota. And when he got his opportunity, he was really good. And everybody saw what he was able to do in the playoffs. That was a headline, and deservedly so. He had the 15-point game in the win against Oklahoma City. 15 points in just 13 minutes in that 42-point win in game 3. And, actually played well in the final 2 games of the series as well. He scored 9 points in 8 minutes in the game 4 loss, and then scored 11 points in 16 minutes in the ultimate game 5 loss. What I had on TJ Shannon at draft time was he's already NBA ready from a physical standpoint. He's got an NBA body. He's 6'7", his wingspan 6'9". Because of the NBA body and athleticism, he absorbs contact well. He's fantastic in transition, absolute terror in transition. Not somebody who's going to consistently score or create for himself or others in the half court, which is why I knew that was something the Wolves needed. So leading into the draft, obviously not knowing the Wolves would end up with Rob Dillingham, that was something just like we're talking about right now. And I did on the show earlier this week. The Wolves need somebody else that could put pressure on the defense from the backcourt. I didn't see that being TJ Shannon in a half court situation. He was a transition terror, could be valuable in that regard, but not knowing the Wolves would get Dillingham, I thought I had Shannon lower on my board in terms of what the Wolves actually needed. Because they drafted Dillingham, it became more palatable to then take TJ Shannon because you're not taking him to rely on his half court creation because that's not something he does. He's a good defender, really good steal rate. I think sometimes at Illinois, the tape isn't as kind for what he did defensively because he carried the entire load on offense and was being asked to score in every facet of the game. So the defense lagged behind a little bit because of the fatigue, because of everything he was being asked to do. What we've seen at the NBA level is a willing defender who, again, is physical, athletic, really, really solid defensively. And once again, fantastic in transition. I want to talk a little bit more about that and what his role could look like with Minnesota next year. We'll do all that here next to close the show. Okay, what TJ Shannon was coming out from the draft is exactly what I thought he was, is exactly what we saw across, 32 regular season games and a handful of playoff games from TJ Shannon. And that is a really solid defender with an NBA body ready to go, fantastic in transition, an absolute terror. He gets downhill in transition and nobody is getting between him and the cup. And he makes that basket more often than not. He finishes through contact. He got some and ones this year, got to the line 21 times, an impressive free throw rate for a guy who wasn't exactly getting half court touches. And he's a volume 3-point shooter with really strong range, 35.5% from three. So a little below league average, but again, really good range, pretty quick trigger, catch and shoot. He's not shooting like he did shoot off the dribble from deep with Illinois. That's not something he should necessarily be doing in Minnesota. It's like, I'm trying to think of a good comp. Like in some ways, he's got more offensive game. I'm trying to think of like recent Wolves players. Troy Brown Jr. He's got more offensive game than Troy Brown Jr., but he's that type of a player. He's like a souped up 3-and-D type player where he can do even more for you in transition than just shoot threes. He's athletic enough and big enough to get to the basket, get fouled, finish through contact. And he's a solid defender. He's also the guy who could turn that defense into offense. I still don't know how much he's going to give you in the half court. He obviously did some stuff in the half court. I don't know that he's that second side creator, that he's that like true defense bender, like we've been talking about with Dillingham and, other potential guys the Wolves could acquire. I threw out Durant earlier. But I think he gives you enough from an offensive punch standpoint. Oh, and he's also not really good to create for others. I think he's pretty good at like a hard dribble and a quick pass decision. But he's not like going to run the offense. He's not going to consistently touch the paint and kick it out for an open shot. Like, I don't think that's necessarily his game, but he does everything else really well that I already mentioned. So there's a real role for him as an NBA player, and I think there's a role for him now. The question is, at the end of the rotation for Minnesota, as I said this on yesterday's show, if you copy and paste the roster right now to the fall and just say it's the same top 8, unlikely that it is, but it's pretty likely that like at least 6 of the 8 will stay the same. Where's there room for somebody, right? Like Dillingham or Shannon is probably guy number 9, and then it's Clark or Minot that's guy number 10. And say it's Shannon and Jalen Clark that get those minutes. Shannon's more the offensive punch guy, the shooter. Clark is the defender, and they're both good defenders. Minot misses out on the more defensive minded role. And in this scenario, Dillingham would miss out on the offense. Like I that's how I see it. I don't see it as like I would put Dillingham and Shannon in the same category because they both are offense first guys. In Shannon's case, is a switchable, willing defender, but offense first guys, whereas Clark and Minot are defense first guys. And I think you take one from each category. And obviously it depends on the matchup, and there's more to it than that. It's not quite that simple, but that's how I look at this. And TJ Shannon is, of the 4, he's the closest thing to a two-way guy. Like I would say right now, he's actually just as good defensively, if not better defensively than he is offensively. But all the stuff in transition could just be the tiebreaker. Clark surprised offensively. He shot 43% from three, like we talked about on Wednesday's show. That's, it's unlikely he's a 40+% guy. If we, zoom out a couple years from now, like I don't think that's sustainable as the volume gets higher. But he might sniff 40%. And if that's the case, he's still not providing you anything else offensively. So that's why I split this up in the way I did in terms of not really categories, but, archetypes, if you will. But I think Dillingham's season wasn't necessarily a disappointment. I think it was a bit of a catch-22 where he needed more leash in order to show growth and improvement. And the Wolves were a good team that was falling short of expectations, that couldn't afford to give him the leash that he needed and probably deserved based on the flashes he showed, and also just being an 8th overall pick and being as young as he is. And I'm not saying the Wolves are the wrong fit for Dillingham, because the start of next season could look very different than the start of this last season. So if he does get a little bit more leash, he's just got to take it and run with it. And we talked about this yesterday. Jaylen Clark did that. He kicked the door down. He shot threes at a clip much greater than the Wolves expected. TJ Shannon did as well when he was given the opportunity. He kicked the door down as well. Rob Dillingham didn't exactly. He had a couple of really nice moments. He certainly impressed with some of the stuff he was able to do offensively, but the consistency wasn't there. Whereas the floor and the consistency for both Clark and Shannon was very obvious this season. So I'm very curious to see how the Timberwolves approach it really as early as preseason next year. Like last year, we saw Josh Minott get featured a lot in preseason to have a chance to earn a role, and he did. Then he lost that role because he couldn't knock down those open threes when he got the opportunity. Is it fair to expect these guys to perform and then they don't in the couple of chances they get? And they're, it's tough. It's like a bench guy in baseball who doesn't get a chance to play enough, so he never gets a rhythm. And then when he does play, he's not in a rhythm and he doesn't play well. It's similar, right? That's just how the business works. You have to capitalize on your opportunities. And as I said yesterday, I think Minott gets one more shot. I think both Clark and Shannon impressed this year, and I think Dillingham didn't as much, but the expectations were also higher. And as I said earlier, the ceiling is higher than any of the rest of these guys. Like Rob Dillingham has an all-star ceiling. Shannon and Clark probably have starter level ceilings. Minott may still, he's still younger than Shannon is, but Dillingham's the guy who the expectations as the number 8 overall pick and the ceiling of an all-star type player, that leads that obviously it means there's higher expectations. And I think it's completely fair. So as I mentioned, I think one of Dillingham or Shannon gets a real shot in the rotation this year. And I mean, they both will get a chance as they did this year, but I think one is probably a regular rotation guy. The other one maybe isn't. But both I thought did well in their opportunities this year. And as I've said before, I don't think the Wolves will draft and keep somebody at both 17 and 31 in this year's draft. So like, they're not going to add 2 more rookies to a team that had 2 first-round picks last year, and Jaylen Clark, who's a rookie the year before, and Minott, who's a rookie the year before that. And that's not even including Leonard Miller, or any of the two-way guys. Like this is they're not going to add 2 more rookies to this, because what do you do? You're not going to move out too many veterans for a conference finals ×2 team to have all these young guys play. So as fun as it is to clamor for these young guys to play, they can't all realistically be part of the rotation. All that to say, Dillingham's ceiling and some of the flashes he showed, and Shannon's consistency and, the transition, the defense, the transition, the potency and transition on offense, those are things that travel, right? Like those aren't going to, playing hard and playing defense travel. They're not going to be peaks and valleys like Dillingham's offensive game, for instance. And so that's just another reason why Shannon has a really good shot at seeing the floor with some consistency this year. All right. That's all I got for you today. We'll be back again on Friday as we continue the player review series. Based on what's up next on the list here, it looks like I've got Dante DiVincenzo and Mike Conley. I'll probably do the same thing as I did today. I'll do a half show on each of those guys, and then probably the next couple, and then we get into the star caliber players next week. We'll look at full shows for the likes of Ant and Jaden and Rudy and probably Julius Randle as well. So a lot to get to here in the coming days. We'll also keep an eye on the finals, game 1 tonight. So looking forward to Thunder Pacers as well. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. You can listen wherever you get podcasts. You can watch on YouTube and also on Locked On Sports Minnesota on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. NFL draft, NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.